So everything in life happens twice. One inside your brain, and then in reality. That is just a remarkably powerful piece of philosophy from basketball legend Michael Jordan. He fundamentally believed in winning the game completely in his mind before his sneakers ever even squeaked on the hardwood court.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something really exciting. We are decoding the winner's brain. We're going to look under the hood at the actual biological and neurological processes that drive distinct types of highly successful people. We'll figure out why some folks absolutely thrive under pressure while others just completely crumble, and how the literal physical wiring of our brains dictates our paths to greatness.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at 3 totally different ways to win. Then, we'll break down the specific brain mechanics of Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, and Napoleon Bonaparte. After that, we'll look at the brain's unique blueprint, and finally wrap up by finding your own winning process so you can apply this to your own life.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, 3 ways to win, and look at this really fascinating paradox. Think about 3 of history's absolute greatest winners. Michael Jordan with his unmatched basketball dominance, Michael Phelps and his untouchable Olympic swimming records, and Napoleon Bonaparte with his historical military conquests. Right? All 3 achieved massive, world-altering success. But here's the secret. To get to the top, they surprisingly activated completely different physical parts of their brains. It definitely wasn't one size fits all.
Okay, so let's dive into this by looking at our first archetype in Section 2, Jordan and procedural memory.
Jordan's method was intensely focused on the mechanical process. He visualized the exact physical sequence of throwing a three-pointer over and over and over again. He'd mentally practice every single step of a match. He would literally imagine feeling the pass, adjusting his grip, and releasing the ball. By doing this, he was actively engaging his nervous system and driving muscle memory, literally without even holding a physical basketball in his hands.
And the biology behind that visualization is just fascinating. When Jordan mentally rehearsed his shots, he was firing up regions beneath the cerebral cortex called the striatum and the basal ganglia. Now, these areas are responsible for procedural learning. So by running that mental loop, his brain sent signals down through the motor cortex, down the spinal column, and directly to the muscles of his arms and back. By the time he was in a real game, the physical movement was entirely automatic. He had already physically mapped the success in his brain.
Moving right along to Section 3, Phelps and overriding the negatives.
Notice the huge contrast here. Where Jordan visualized the process, Phelps focused almost entirely on the outcome of winning. But his secret weapon was actually imagining the worst-case scenarios. He'd picture himself winning gold, sure, but he would also imagine the utter chaos of his goggles breaking and filling with water mid-race.
And this brilliantly illustrates the incredible power of the prefrontal cortex. Phelps was activating this higher-level brain region to exert what we call top-down control. He was literally practicing how to override the negative panicked responses that would naturally pop up if a handicap happened in the water. He basically decided beforehand exactly how he would stay calm, silence that inner voice of doubt, and secure the win despite a total emergency. He mapped out his calm response before the panic ever had a chance to set in.
Now for Section 4, Napoleon's amygdala-driven survival.
Our third winner, Napoleon Bonaparte, operated on a completely different, honestly, much darker mental fuel. Just look at this number, 23. Before a massive battle, Napoleon would sit down and literally imagine up to 23 different ways he could die that day. Now, he wasn't doing this to trigger a panic attack, though, let's be real, for most of us it definitely would. No, he was doing it to ruthlessly eliminate those specific threats in his battlefield strategy. It was an exercise in pure survival.
This kind of extreme pragmatism relied heavily on the amygdala. That's the almond-shaped center deep in the brain responsible for threat detection, safety processing, and the vital fight-or-flight response. You see, Napoleon wasn't driven by a love of the process or visualizing a victory lap. He was driven by the evolutionary need to just not be taken out on the battlefield.
Which brings us to Section 5, the brain's unique blueprint. So the really crucial question here is, which of these brains should you try to emulate to achieve your own goals?
Well, the answer becomes really clear when we look at sustainability. Jordan used his striatum for a high sustainability, process-driven approach. Phelps used his prefrontal cortex to override panic, which is also highly sustainable. But look at Napoleon. Functioning from fear relies on the amygdala. And while it worked for him in a literal life-or-death battlefield scenario, as a daily driver for your modern everyday goals,
it has extremely low sustainability. Continuously driving your stress pathways and operating out of paranoia will eventually just fry your brain. It is simply not healthy for long-term success.
But before you just decide to be exactly like Jordan, we have to remember how highly individual our brains actually are. Think of your brain's genetics as a building's blueprint. Every human has the same basic structural layout. Your prefrontal cortex is in the exact same place as Elon Musk's, but your life experiences, your nutrition, the specific traumas you faced, those act as the interior decorator. Your unique experiences physically alter the strength of your brain's connections and synapses. No two brains are identical, not even identical twins. So you can't just copy someone else's mental process perfectly. You really have to find what aligns with your unique internal wiring.
Finally, Section 6, Finding Your Winning Process. Let's build all of this into a framework so you can figure out what actually works for you. Based on the neuroscientific insights from our source material, here is a simple 3-step framework you can use right now to pinpoint your own highly sustainable, process-driven path to success.
Step 1 is simple but totally crucial. Find a topic you love so much that it makes you want to immediately share it with others. Really watch your own behavior patterns here. What do you genuinely enjoy pontificating about? When you read something fascinating, what is the topic that makes you immediately want to text 3 friends and talk their ears off about it? Pinpointing that genuine, organic enthusiasm is the absolute foundation of building a process-driven brain. Step 2 requires some extreme honesty. Determine your willingness to do the hard work. Ask yourself, are you truly willing to put in the effort day in and day out for hours at a time? Because look, having a passion isn't enough on its own. Neither Michael Jordan nor Michael Phelps achieved their sustained, legendary success without a massive, almost incomprehensible amount of repetitive, daily effort. You have to be willing to endure the sheer volume of work required to actually become a master.
And that brings us to Step 3, and a really profound question you have to ask yourself. If you didn't get the outcome you wanted, would the process have given you enough joy? This is the hardest, yet absolutely most vital question you must ask yourself to guarantee long-term sustainability and mental health.
Always remember this golden rule. The outcome is merely a byproduct. The process is what you actually have to live with. If you can honestly look at your major goal and say you'd be incredibly happy dedicating 10 years to the daily process of trying to achieve it, even if, at the end of a decade, you never hit that ultimate shiny milestone, then you have found your path. You found the process that will nourish, rather than fry, your brain.
So, I am going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Are you demanding the results of a winner yesterday without being willing to do the process of a winner today? True, sustained greatness doesn't come from just ideating and desiring an outcome. It comes from doing the daily, repetitive, often unglamorous work required to physically wire your brain for success. So don't let your obsession with an outcome distract you from the beautiful, absolutely necessary process. Think about that as you go after your own goals. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep building that winning brain, and I'll catch you next time.